Hi everyone and welcome back to the Edge of the Bed YouTube channel. I haven't filmed a video in a long time, but I wanted to do a bit of a catch up. I asked for some questions maybe a couple of weeks back on Instagram to the survivor community, and I just thought a way to come back and do an update in a video is to just answer some of these questions. So the majority of these questions have come from other survivors. And if you don't know myself and it's your first time here, I'm Ryan Gadsby. I'm a child sexual abuse survivor at the hands of my stepdad. And I use and share my story to hopefully help others and raise awareness and provide education to parents and people who work with children and young people. I myself am a teacher and I work in safeguarding in our school as well. And I teach SMSC in our school too, which is an SEMH provision for children who can't access mainstream education. So I'm sort of well versed in teaching tough topics to children and also teaching them in a way that suits their needs, however different they may be. So to start off, I think if I just read through them, I've got my iPad down here, so if I'm looking down here, that's why. We'll just go through question to question. And if you have any questions yourself that you'd want me to answer in another video, then please leave a comment, or you can come to our Instagram page, The Edge of the Bed, and feel free to drop a question on there on a story, on one of my stories, or just message me it and hopefully I'll get to it. So the first question is, why do I feel bad for telling on my abuser? It's not Stockholm Syndrome. And I think this is like such a common experience with survivors, especially survivors of interfamiliar abuse or abuse of someone close to the family or close to them who they love and care for. The thing is, when you're a child and something like sexual abuse happens to you from someone that you actually trust and you love, you don't have a full understanding of the situation or what has taken place. So you still grow positive memories and you still grow what feels like a nice relationship with the person despite the sexual abuse that's happening, especially if the sexual abuse itself isn't aggressive and it's more coercive and it's grooming and things like that, and it includes grooming and things and building on a relationship for the abuse to happen. As a child, you don't know the difference. You don't know the difference between someone that you love and obviously an abuser. And because you might not understand it, again, those actions, that negative feeling that you get as you grow older towards that person, or maybe sometimes that doesn't happen, but it's not there. So you still, like I say, have those memories of that person, and that's something that you hold dear to yourself. So when you do come to speak out, and I know I can speak for myself, when I came to speak out for the first time, you do have that guilt and that feeling bad for that person, your abuser. And it's not, people always comment on my videos and say it's Stockholm Syndrome, and I think that's a whole different phenomenon in itself. But I think what it is just caring for someone who you think, or who you thought cared for you in the same way. And I can completely understand it, and I do think it takes time, and I mean that'll probably come to be a lot of my answers in this video. But even now, certain memories will pop up and I'll be like, I wish I would have done this differently and this differently, and it is a lot of self-blame, and you've got to kind of remind yourself of who you are and to have that self-empathy sometimes and put yourself in other survivors' shoes. And I think reading stories, and it's easier to empathise with someone else's story than your own. Yeah, I think it's one of those with time. But in terms of why, yeah, I think what I've said sort of answers that. But yeah, these are hard questions. But right, okay, so this one. Did you always remember your abuse, or did you have a block or different sort of gaps in your memory? My abuse, the way it sort of happened, I kind of always knew what had happened because I could remember bits. I guess I couldn't remember it all, but I didn't have what some survivors experience where, they're sexually abused and then years later they get a dream or a flashback or something. Because for me, it was sort of all happened at once. There weren't a gap where I didn't see my abuser. It was like I spoke to the police while I still lived with my abuser. So the gap between the sexual abuse fading out and me speaking out wasn't huge. So I still remembered, quite a lot of it. That there are things now as an adult that I look back and I can't remember patches. But at the time, yeah, I could remember. So, but like I say, people do have that situation where they'll get a dream or they'll get a flashback or a memory come into their mind, and then, you know, if it's a one-time occurrence, if the sexual abuse was a one-time occurrence, they're then questioning, did it happen, did it not happen, was it a dream? And I have heard that a lot, and I think it must be a hard one to manage. Now, I myself don't have personal experience in that, and I think if you're able to talk to people around you about it, and see what they think and see what you can sort of put together once you are ready to, yeah, it's a hard one. But no, personally, I always remembered, not the whole thing, but I remembered that what had happened. So the next one says, where do you feel the perpetrator still has power over you, or in what situations? I would say for this one, the only thing that comes to mind really is the shame aspect, and I think it's something that I'll probably carry for most of my life, but it's something that I try to manage. But I think that shame of the things that happen that that only me and him knew about, I think knowing that in my head, and when I had to tell it to the police and when I've had to tell it to people, it still weighs heavy and it still feels very shameful to this day. But whether that's power he has, it's, over me, I don't know if it is. But it is something heavy that does affect me still now, that I'm working through. You know, it comes all along with shame, self-blame, and those sorts of things that we do carry. Okay, so this one's an alright, quite a good one. So, were you scared of your dad, or did you try and stay away from him in your house when you was a kid? So my stepdad, who was my abuser, they're referring to. No, when the sexual abuse was happening, I wouldn't say I was scared of him. In fact, he was probably one of my probably the favourite adult in my life. And for being a step parent, that's quite rare, I would say. He would put me as the favourite. I would get treats, and we went on holiday all the time, and people called me the spoilt child because of how well that we seemed to get along. So no, I weren't afraid of him. The abuse I would describe as, sometimes it did confuse me, and I was kind of like, I did question it a little bit when I got older about what's going on here. But as I've said before, he told me this is what dads do, and I had no reason not to believe him due to our positive, strong relationship there. It's that's where it becomes hard to spot, because when you've got children whose abusers are the most trusted person in their life, or their caregiver, or someone that they love, even when they do understand that the abuse is wrong, they still then struggle to speak out, because then they're dealing with the weight of loving that person, caring for that person, and wanting that person to have a good life. But yet they start to understand that actually what that person's done to them is horrible, and it's affecting them, and it's disgusting. And yeah, so it's really tricky. And I think for children, well, let's say for parents instead, trying to manage that when you're trying to prevent it is difficult, because when adults are getting close to your children, in or outside of the family, you don't want to always be thinking, oh, maybe it's grooming. And I understand that. But we do have to be really vigilant, because that strong relationship that can seemingly be building could be something else. And it's very hard to tell or read between the lines, and sometimes it's not possible. And it relies on us educating children to be able to vocalise what's happened. And even then, it's a tough task when, again, they love and care for that person. So this question is, where was your mum, and do you have siblings? To give you a quick sort of overview, my mum was a single parent with me and my sister Megan, and we met my abuser when I was about 9 years old. They quickly grew a relationship very quickly. They were married in a year, and we had moved in after 6 months ish. And we were calling him Dad as well after like 6 or 7 months. So my mum, in that time when the sexual abuse was happening, was around and in the home, and so was my sister Megan. My sister Megan wasn't sexually abused, although she was deeply emotionally abused and bullied by my abuser. Yeah, my mum was around. I think my abuser was good at hiding it, so I was scared of water. And the first time the sexual abuse happened, he came to help me in the shower, and that's sort of how he got the space to abuse me. And I was at a sort of age where maybe it was a bit weird for my mum to come into the bathroom, so she never really came in and checked, and he, like I say, used that space then sexually abused me. And then it would go from there, and he'd do it in my bedroom and things like that. So he was really good at hiding it, and it came as like a full circle, really. Like, he polished his public character, and then he was good at hiding it because he'd done it before to other children as well, which I later found out. And yeah, he was kind of a skillful groomer in a way. He knew exactly what to say and do to find the spaces and to cover it up. He'd encourage my mum and my sister to go out and do activities together so that he could be alone with me in the house. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. And then the last one that I'm going to cover says, what was it like talking to your mum about the sexual abuse you experienced? So I first spoke to my mum. So when I spoke out, I was 16 and I was planning to take my own life. But instead I went to the police. When I had gone to the police, my mum had no idea, and she was sat at home with my abuser. The police came and knocked on the door while my mum was there with my abuser and arrested him in front of my mum. They then told her that I was the one who made the allegation, and I wasn't there for this, like I say, but my mum then began shouting and screaming at him. And then I didn't see my mum until late. I don't know if it was that night or the day after, it's hard to remember, but I remember the first thing she said was, why didn't you tell me? And I can't remember. And then we just sort of had a moment of just like accepting or just acknowledging what had happened. I never really had a deep conversation with my mum about what had happened. There was patches where I would open up, and even now I've never sat down and said what had happened in front of her. She watches my videos and she's seen my podcasts and stuff, so she can piece it together. I think survivors will all understand this, in that it is so difficult to have that conversation. I think it's really hard with family members to have those conversations, especially that were around at the time that the abuse was happening. So what was it like talking to her? It's uncomfortable, it's scary, and it feels almost, you feel guilt, but also you feel like you're projecting guilt, and that you're going to feel like someone blames themselves, like my mum will blame herself. And I don't really want that. I know people on my page will sometimes comment and say, where was your mother? This wouldn't happen in my household. The fact is, he groomed everyone in the community. There were people that he were friends with that were social workers. People that he were friends with were vicars and people that had dealt with abuse cases before, and still they didn't spot it, and they were around our house all the time. So to expect someone to spot something like this when they don't have any experience of it and they haven't had any education. My mum was from a low socioeconomic background, and she probably wasn't even aware that this happened in families, and especially at that time. So I don't like to push blame or encourage guilt on anyone, because it doesn't help anyone, and it makes me feel worse by trying to push guilt or blame onto someone, if that makes sense. So yeah, there are the questions. Again, if you want to ask any questions to me on Instagram, feel free to do so. So yeah, I wanted to do a quick update on just where I'm going with the page and everything, and how I'm doing. I haven't posted much in a long time, and I think it's sort of wanting to find a bit of a path with where I'm going with it and what I want to achieve. I think a lot of what I've been doing has been focused on prevention, and really I am quite passionate about helping survivors themselves, and I'm lucky enough to be in a job where I work with children who have experienced things such as what I have, and I get that rewarding factor from that. And I am practicing those skills and developing as a professional who wants to work with children who have experienced trauma. So in that way, I'm being fulfilled in my goals in that way, and I'm wanting to grow and build on that, and that's sort of taking my attention away from the prevention stuff that I am still passionate about, but it's just finding time for it. And I think developing in my profession, in developing my skills in where I am working now as a teacher in SEMH provision, and involved in safeguarding in that school, and SMSC development, and PSHE development, should I say. It's giving me skills that are going to help me when I want to take those bigger steps and help more people in the future. And I'm only 24 years old, so there's plenty of time for me to get to that place, and I want to be able to be equipped with the skills to actually help survivors and not just jump into it not knowing what I'm doing. So that's why things have slowed a bit with prevention pathways and that sort of thing, because I'm really wanting to get them skills to make a difference. But I still want to be posting on the Edge of the Bed page, and I still want to be supporting survivors and growing a community. And I want to build like a proper community that we can meet up online or in person. And that is like a big goal of mine, to get a community going like that and do some positive things and make some positive changes. And that's all I have to really add. And I'm still doing training courses, free parent training courses in person. Got a few of them that I'm hoping to do next year. And yeah, I've done a couple different training events for involved in the church and stuff, and there's more of them coming as well. So yeah, the mission's still going, we're still pushing on with it. It's just taking time to develop that skill so I can make a true difference. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.